And it's actually very important also to, of course, to be together. It's damaging to be apart too much. And this is one of the big mistakes that a lot of young people make is, commuter marriages tend to be very difficult to maintain.
Is that like a thing now?
For sure.
Really?
Living in different cities. Yeah,
What?
a lot of couples live in different cities. For sure. The other part that's...
Even sleeping in separate bedrooms, every alarm bell I have would go off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're just not together enough, like I'm on the road all the time. I'm on a book tour, I'm doing all kinds of cool stuff and it's really, really fun. But I understand that I can't do this forever. I need my wife to hear my snoring, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Proximity, there's no substitute for proximity.
For sure. There's nothing like it. This is one of the reasons that the coronavirus epidemic was so profoundly deleterious to our mental health. We have a mental health crisis just rolling across the United States right now. Ordinarily, about 9.5% of the population is exhibiting symptoms of clinical depression. Right now, it's about 28%.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that has everything to do with loneliness in the wake of the coronavirus epidemic.
Whoa.
Many people are much lonelier than they think because of the isolation from other people. Social media is the junk food of what you need, which is actual human love with real contact, eye contact, and touch.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting. This is so much better, this conversation, because we're actually in the same room. This is so much better than if we were talking on Zoom. Profoundly different because we've got the mind meld on.
Yes.
We've gone through 50 topics already. We couldn't have done it on Zoom. And the reason is because we wouldn't have established a link of oxytocin, which is the hormone that links people together through eye contact. We wouldn't be, and if you're not physically proximate to build this neuromodulator link with the person who's closest to you in your life on a regular enough basis, woe be unto you. Look out. It's going to be trouble.
Yeah, no doubt. You said in an interview at some point that Zoom is really making us lonely.
Yeah.
For a while, I thought it was pretty rad, if I'm really honest. Like at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, because I'm an introvert, so I was like, hey, working from home, this is amazing.
Yeah, right.
And then about, I don't know, probably 18, 19 months in, I started to feel isolated and alone, and I've got a loving wife. I see my sister every week. Like, I was like, man, if I'm feeling it, then I know people are really getting rocked by
Extroverts
this.
like me, man, I was climbing the walls. Got a lot of work done. Got a whole book written. But I was sincerely less happy.
Yeah.
Sincerely. And the weirdest thing about it is, look, Zoom is great. This technology is really great. But it's also done even bad when we don't need to use it. I am too productive. We're in Los Angeles. It's fantastic. I get to talk to you. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to give a speech by Zoom and then walk into a speech in person. Last Friday I gave a speech in Madrid followed by a speech in Dallas. I was in Dallas. That's too productive. I'm actually a work machine and I need to be very disciplined because I want to do more. I want more. We're more machines. We're wired for more. And what Zoom is given us the ability to do is to stack productivity on top of productivity on top of productivity. And we need to sort that out.
That's really interesting because I'm such a fiend for efficiency.
Yeah.
I am not prone to seeing the problem, but I actually understand what you mean. There's no, like there used to be down moments where I was traveling from one thing to another, even if it was small, like in an Uber or something like that. But now when you have literal where you have to say, hey guys, I'm so sorry. I just need to go pee because there's no break.
No
just
break.
Zoom.
It's
Zoom.
bad. It's bad for you. It's bad for your brain.
Yeah, no, I hate it and try to avoid it at all costs.
I hate it too. And thank God the world is more or less open again. And let's hope that we can keep it that way because our happiness requires it. Our love requires it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right, really fast. I want to go back to, I was super freaked out when I heard, so I knew in Japan they were having trouble that people were, I think it's called the hikikomori or something like that. These guys that live in their house, they just play video games. They don't want to engage with real women. But I didn't realize that people are 30% less likely now to get married, to have sex. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's startling. So if we know that this is a fear of being crushed, how do we begin to claw our way back out of this? What caused it?
Well, this is the work of Jean Twenge, who's a social psychologist at San Diego State University down the road from here. And she's shown all of these numbers that we're 30 percentage points less likely to date than we were when I was in my teens and 20s. And that's what I cared about. You know, it was love. That's what I wanted, was love. That was the most interesting thing ever. It was absolutely captured my attention. And so he talks about the reasons for this. And there are a bunch of different reasons for this. There's this sort of safetyism culture where we brought up our kids to feel afraid of other people, which is weird because, you know, growing up where you and I in the Pacific Northwest, when you did, or even, especially when I did in the 1970s, was way more dangerous. There was more crime. There was more drugs. And yet we were largely unsupervised as kids, right? And we were probably running around Puyallup.
Oh, my friend, I could ride my bike like 4 miles away unsupervised at 10.
Your mom was like, don't come home before dinner.
Yeah,
or whatever, right?
Yeah, if I was in the neighborhood, she would just whistle. But I remember my mom, without a helmet on, I would ride my bike 3 or 4 miles away to a bike track.
Right.
And like do BMX jumps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All unsupervised, no adults, nothing.
And you know, this is no small part of your success, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Good
like
for your mom.
You need to be letting your kids put themselves in danger. Now, how I survived my childhood, I will never know.
Totally. It was more dangerous.
But,
it unambiguously was more dangerous. But you were less fearful as an entrepreneur in both life, business, and love.
And you have to figure out how to deal with shit.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you go to the bike track and there are bullies there, but there's no parents.
Yeah.
So
nobody's adjudicating your disputes, et cetera. So you weren't asking for safe spaces on campuses.
No.
And you weren't afraid to ask your wife out. That's step number one. The second thing is the really disastrous consequences of life on social media. Social media has made it much, much scarier for us to fail. Much scarier. The social comparison to be much worse than it is in the past. So people have lower self-esteem and more social fear because of what social media has brought to them. And the last, which is a really interesting phenomenon, is the research on internet dating or dating apps, on how that's actually lowered our ability to love each other. And that comes down to a big problem in the algorithm, actually, believe it or not. We look with dating apps, they match us in ways where we're too compatible. Love and interest come from people who are compatible, sort of, but not that much. Real love is complementary, not compatible.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of research that shows this. So even biologically, there's a famous set of experiments in the 1990s where these researchers, they would have guys in college, wear a T-shirt.
Oh God, I love this study.
You know this study, right? And they didn't shower for 2 days, and they wore the T-shirt, and they took the T-shirts off, and they put them in cardboard boxes and punched holes in the boxes. And women who didn't know them, they would have to sniff the box. Gross, right? And then they would say on the basis of this, which of these guys is most attractive on the basis of the smell of their sweaty T-shirts. And it turns out that uniformly, they found most attractive the guys who were most different than they were in terms of their immune systems. You need a big repertoire it's very important that your parents not be SIBs for you to have a strong immune system. We all know that inbreeding and incest actually leads to children who are prone to all sorts of preventable diseases because their immune systems tend to be weak. You need people who are very different, have a different immunological profile from each other, and you can tell that with your olfactory sense. Crazy. Yeah. And so that's an example biologically of a greater psychological principle too, which is you find attractive people who have the qualities that you don't have. Now, it creates conflict too. I get it. But what do we match on? And in your dating profile, it's like Republican. It's like, and so this ideological conformity, and it's I said this, I was telling my kids, my kids are 24, 22, and 19, and telling my 24-year-old, my son, he's getting married this summer. Wow. And I was telling him about this. I said, it's basically you're inadvertently, with a dating app, which he never used, but all his friends did, you're inadvertently trying to date your sibling.
Oh,
and my son says, not hot.
Agreed. Yeah, that's not ideal.
Yeah. So all of this adds up. Social fear, safetyism in the way you were raised, and too much compatibility. 1, 2, 3, 30 points down.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, like, man, I love modernity.
Yeah.
I love it, but in the same way that I'm skeptical about myself and the ways that I think, I am skeptical about modernity and some of the things that it's introduced.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because I'm a Gen Xer. So for me, it was like, I was married before dating apps came about.
Thank God, right?
Thank God. I am a Me Too waiting to happen because my wife It was a school for adults, but I
Yeah.
was the teacher and she was the student. But like when you really break
same
it down,
age, more or less.
I'm 3 years older.
Yeah, same age, more or less. Yeah.
So it was me at my best. And there's this whole thing around whoever's the center of attention, women tend to find more attractive.
Yeah.
And so I was the center of attention because I'm literally at the front of the class teaching. And there was like a power imbalance, which she found attractive.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe she shouldn't. Maybe that's bad. Like maybe now
Well, this
people
is
would be
social
really
construction
annoyed.
that says that this shouldn't happen. And I understand that because there is plenty of abuse. But you can't rule out an entire class of behavior because of some cases of abuse. Look, this year, 17% of people have met their spouse at work. Bad enough that everybody's on Zoom. You're not going to find your spouse on a Zoom screen. Very, very unlikely. But on top of that, if you're making rules saying no love at work, then you've overcorrected.
As a company owner, though, I'm super paranoid.
I got it.
It's like, oh,
I got it, yeah.
But I'm the same, right? I want people to be able to find each other. And so we've always made it, in every company I've had, a policy that as long as you tell HR or whatever, it's all good. Because damn, like, how else are you meeting people?
Love is awesome.
Yes.
Love is the best. 70% of people who have a best friend at work love their jobs.
Yeah.
58% of people who have a best friend at work wouldn't leave for more pay. This is the life in life at the friendship level. And now you add, on the other hand, 25% of romantic relationships at work have involved one person who is married, and that's bad.
Ooh,
that's bad, right? Hi. And so look, but nobody thinks that there's no balance in here. Nobody thinks that there's not going to be abuses when there's something good. But to rule it out because of the liability, this is an overcorrection that is, I think, that's indicative of the way that we see love in our society that leads to these patterns that are lowering our happiness. We need love. Happiness is love, full stop.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.